and meet the little green man and Zoom Zoom. Visiting Earth from planets of the sun. Quite first, quite invisible. Nobody else can see them, only you and me. Sitting in kids who much prefers his nickname. Skis is the boy that Granny has come to see. Skip, zoom, 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 about to every turn. But when the shark is on the coast, the little green man.
Skeets's friend Jenny said her dad was clearing out their shed and would Skeets like a tandem, which they didn't want anymore. "A bicycle made for two?" said Skeets. "Oh, how exciting! Thank you very much, Jenny, and please thank your dad for me too." After he cleaned the tandem up, it shone like new and looked very smart. The little green man and Zoom Zoom were quite puzzled when they saw it at first, but after trying it out a number of times with Skeets, they quite took to the idea of cycling. They set off for a long ride into the country, with Skeets in front and the little green man at the rear. Zoom Zoom was happy to fly behind some of the time, but he liked sitting on the handlebars now and then for a rest. Along the winding country roads they pedalled, and after travelling a few miles, they stopped to look at the horses in a farmer's field. Farmer Tom was very friendly and invited Skeets to ride one of his horses for a while. The farmer couldn't see that the little green man and Zoom Zoom were also mounted behind Skeets, though the horse had a pretty shrewd idea that something was up. Still, he didn't mind, and the threesome had a lovely time riding across the meadow. When they returned, Farmer Tom was talking to another farmer, who was saying that thousands of eggs had been stolen from farms nearby over the last few days, and that he'd better keep a sharp lookout for the thief. Farmer Tom suggested that Skeets might like to stay on the horse to watch the other horses being fed. A man who'd been driving a van stopped to look at what was going on as he ate his snack lunch. Skeets rode across to watch the horses having their nose bags put on. Just then, the van driver stooped and picked up a stone, which he threw at Skeets's horse. Up reared the horse as the sharp stone stung, and Skeets, the little green man and Zoom Zoom were flung off its back. Fortunately, they all landed in a pile of hay, so that it didn't hurt anyone too much. The farmer had seen what had happened and turned to the van driver, who was sniggering away as he leaned on the fence.
"Go on, be off with you," he called. "I'll have the law on you throwing stones like that."
And the van driver skulked off, got into his van, and drove away. "Oh, I'm glad you're not hurt," said the farmer, who invited Skeets to come back next time he felt like riding a horse. "And we'll make sure there'll be no hooligans around with stones." After thanking the farmer, Skeets, the little green man and Zoom Zoom set off down the road which led through the fields. After a short ride, they caught up with the blue van which had been driven away by the man who had thrown the stone. His tire was flat, and he had no spare wheel.
I ran over some glass in the road and it cut me tyres up," said the van driver. "Would you get help for me in the next village?"
Skeet said that he didn't really think he deserved help after the way he'd thrown the stone at the horse, but he would call at the next garage and ask them to send their breakdown truck. The smarmy van driver grudgingly thanked Skeets as he set off again on his tandem along the road. Zoom Zoom had been looking around inside the van before flying after Skeets and the little green man on the tandem. He whispered in the little green man's ear before flying up to take his place on Skeets's handlebars. They reached the village and stopped at the garage, where old Bob the mechanic was standing beside his breakdown truck, scratching his head. Skeets told him about the little blue van with the torn tire and asked him to go to the help of the van driver.
Well, I will, as soon as I can get my truck started,
said old Bob.
but it's acting up at the moment and won't go anywhere.
Old Bob gave the truck a kick and went into the workshop to get some tools. And this gave the little green man the opportunity to do something to help. He produced his antennae, which began to spark and crackle as his magic rays streaked out to the old breakdown truck. It started at once and was ticking over beautifully by the time old Bob put his head out of the workshop.
Oh, well, must have been that last kick that did it,
He said. He climbed into the driver's seat.
I'll go and fix that fellow's tyre now.
He said, and drove off up the lane. Zoom Zoom again whispered in the little green man's ear, and the little green man nodded. He said, which meant Zoom Zoom had a look inside the blue van and says it was full of boxes of eggs. Wow, said Skeets. I wondered if the van driver is the one who's been stealing the farmer's eggs. I wouldn't put it past him, said the little green man. He's a nasty piece of work. A few miles further down the road, they heard the sound of a vehicle roaring up behind them. And when Skeets looked in his mirror, he saw it was the blue van again. The van gave Skeets and his friends no room, and as it passed, they threw themselves off the tandem into the ditch to save themselves from being run down. That was a close thing. I think we should find a policeman and tell him about that van driver, said Skeets. Let's hurry, though I expect he'll not stop now until he's well away from here. The three friends pedalled for all they were worth down the road, and to their surprise, they saw the blue van again, parked cheekily at the roadside. There was no sign of the driver, so Skeets and the little green man took the opportunity to have a good look inside it. As Zoom Zoom had said, it was packed full of eggs. Zoom Zoom began flying around to warn Skeets that the van driver was coming. He was carrying yet another box of eggs, which he had just stolen from a farm. Quickly, said the little green man. Get out of sight, Skeets, and hide the tandem. Leave this to me. The little green man raised his antennae, and his magic rays streaked to the van wheel. In a flash, the tire was torn again. The van driver put the egg box on the front seat and was about to step into the driver's seat when he noticed the tire. He jumped up and down in a rage and then looked very thoughtful for a moment. He took the eggs he had just put in the front seat and began walking away from the van. Look, cried Skeets to the little green man. He's getting away and is taking what he can with him. Whoa, said the little green man, which meant, we passed a telephone box back up the road. Go and call the police. Skeets made off as the little green man's magic rays began streaking after the van driver. They reached the large box of eggs, and the van driver stopped in his tracks. From the egg box came a very loud cheeping noise. The van driver put down the box and opened it up. He couldn't walk for them. Everywhere he wanted to put his feet, there were little chicks. Of course, no one except Skeets can see the little green man and Zoom Zoom usually. But just as the van driver was getting ready for a giant jump across the chicks, Zoom Zoom materialized in front of him. He cheeped like a chicken and did a couple of loop-the-loops around the van driver's head. That did it. The van driver fainted at the sight of the flying Zoom Zoom chicken. The little green man's magic rays repaired the torn tire again. And he and Zoom Zoom settled to wait for Skeets to bring the police. A short time later, they arrived, and the van driver was soon on his way to jail. And the thousands of eggs were on their way back to the farmers they were stolen from. Skeets, the little green man, and Zoom Zoom watched the vehicle drive away. and Skeets decided he'd had enough excitement for one day. How about you, Greenie? He asked. Shall we go home now? The little green man turned. He said, well, really.